Hi, it's Lee, and welcome to the Tech Economist. Alright, so we've talked about how Tesla has certain demand levers, and how we've had so much comfort with the demand buffers. First, we had the backlog waiting list, then we had the margins. Except we didn't expect them both to drop at the same time. Due to increased supply and higher interest rates, a lot of investors seeing the numbers are under the assumption demand is still not as high as production. Whereas many other permabulls are still saying Tesla sell every car they make. Anyway, there was the third demand lever too, that Tesla has still not used. And many investors are currently calling for it to be used. It is, of course, advertising. Now, when ASPs have dropped from around $52,000 in Q4 down to around $47,000 for this Q1, that's in the vicinity of $2 billion less profit in a quarter. Now, sure, that was a drastic price cut that put Tesla from a prestigious brand to a more mainstream brand, and hopefully it is unlikely any future price cuts will have to be that drastic. Although Tesla did recently reduce the price of the Model Y by $2,000 in the US. But even if the prices dropped an average ASP of just $1,000 for all Teslas, then that's still going to be the equivalent of $2 billion less in annual gross profit with 500,000 deliveries. Hence why we have so many people saying that spending some money on advertising would be a better return. Some are suggesting that even just test some advertising first, talking about budgets of $50 million spent online, maybe even on Twitter, to educate people about Teslas. A lot of the stigma surrounding electric cars has still not gone, perhaps not enough for the mainstream. Tesla could simply show ads educating people about the benefits of a Tesla and electric driving. With $50 million ad spend with a CPM or cost per thousand views of $10, then that would mean 5 billion views, which sounds like a lot. Perhaps serve an ad about 20 times on average to the same person to reinforce the message so they see it enough. Perhaps each ad shows a different feature, or is able to target the audience enough to promote the feature they might like the most. Perhaps if targeting parents, you can promote the safety features, or if it's pet lovers, then dog mode. Anyway, if 20 ads are served up, then that would be to 250 million people who saw a Tesla ad 20 times. And if out of those 250 million people, perhaps 1% of them clicked on one of those ads, that would mean 2.5 million visitors to Tesla's website. If it costs $50 million, then that is $20 a visitor. If 1%, i.e. 25,000 of those visitors end up ordering a Tesla, then that costs $2,000 to get a sale. If each sale is worth $7,500, then that's $5,500 profit per sale, or almost $140 million gross profit in total. On just $50 million ad spend, that's 25,000 more sales, perhaps over a quarter, which is not far off between the discrepancy of what production and deliveries are now. Alternatively, if these vehicles don't sell, they contribute $0 in profit. With those same metrics, that would mean that about $100 million ad spend a quarter on advertising might generate about 50,000 more vehicle sales a quarter. This could be enough to bump up Tesla's deliveries and keep them up with the future increase in production numbers. Tesla could also justify some more expense on advertising too. If they spent up to 3 times as much per visitor, then it would still be making a positive return. As a result, Tesla are able to sell more cars, which means they can then justify producing at higher run rates and taking more advantage of economies of scale. And this is how the benefit of advertising is justified to the consumer. Advertising means more sales, which means more economies of scale, which means lower costs, which means lower prices for the consumer. Right now, doesn't that sound like what Tesla are also aiming for? Remember, hopefully within the next year or so, Berlin and Texas may ramp up a further 500,000 more Model Ys a year. Now, this will reduce the cost of all Model Ys from those factories, given they're running at twice the output. But that's only if Tesla can sell that many more vehicles. There is potentially about $4 billion gross profit in those additional sales, and that's without factoring in the reduced costs of all the vehicles due to the economies of scale, so possibly worth $5 billion. In other words, in a way, Tesla could justify up to $5 billion on advertising to get the additional sales for Model Y when those factories are ramped up. And on the contrary side, though, yes, those consumers do need to be able to afford a Tesla as well. And educating people about a Tesla, although it may increase their desire to want one, it won't put enough money in their bank account so they can necessarily afford one. So there is still a limit to affordability. Of course, the economy and interest rates also have an effect on affordability. But like we're saying, ramp those factories up more, then the costs will come down too, which can be passed on to the consumer. Essentially, there are a lot more cost savings still to come for Tesla as they ramp up, and other various supply chains, and vertical integration comes into effect and scales more. In the meantime, if Tesla just need to advertise to push sales another 50,000 a quarter globally, then deliveries won't be far off 500,000 a quarter when production hits that level, presumably towards the end of the year. And although Tesla's advertising can't literally make more people afford a Tesla, it could educate them on how they may be able to afford a Tesla by comparing costs of ownership with ICE. It could educate consumers on how much safer a Tesla is, so that a new car buyer perhaps justifies spending that little bit extra on a Tesla, knowing their family is safer, and perhaps make sacrifices elsewhere, like no vacation for the year. ICE is still Tesla's main competition. You can talk about EV market share, but I think it's more about overall auto market share, and EVs are still relatively small in that space. Tesla has a lot more ICE vehicles to compete with than they do electric. Therefore, a lot of the advertising should be mainly about convincing people to adopt electric over ICE, possibly debunking some of the stereotypes and myths of electric cars, pointing out how the technology is superior, the infotainment is second to none, the ride and handling is a better version of driving, and then all the FSD capabilities. There are still plenty of people spending more than a Tesla costs who buy ICE cars, and even more when you factor in the overall cost of ownership. Therefore, Tesla's main incentive for advertising is to convince new car buyers to go from an ICE vehicle to a Tesla. Of course, Tesla do only offer a very limited option to new car buyers, with what is only 2 relatively affordable models available, compared to even BMW, who have many permutations of every style available. Of course, this is for Tesla to amass such economies of scale in order to drive down the costs of these models and inevitably compete on price, which is why a Model Y costs about $30,000 less to make than a Ford Mach-E. But Tesla needs to compete on price against ICE cars, not other electric cars. For electric to be the future, it does need to be affordable for the masses. Tesla needs to get their production up, to increase economies of scale, to reduce costs, to pass on the savings to the consumer for lower prices that increase demand accordingly. Advertising may serve as the bridge that increases demand whilst Tesla are increasing the production in the meantime. Elon has talked about Tesla advertising several times and is not totally opposed to the idea. It may, however, still be too early. We're saying at the moment that we're only looking for a 5 to 10% boost in sales. Perhaps Tesla is not ready yet. Perhaps they're waiting for something to really advertise first. Maybe when FSD is solved, then it would be a new product that suddenly people can justify spending more on and make larger sacrifices if it's a fully autonomous vehicle. Maybe Tesla want to wait until they have a few more models in the market, like the Cybertruck, Compact and Van, and thus can justify advertising more as they can promote to a much larger total addressable market, rather than just a sedan and crossover. When Tesla start advertising, they may want to make it a big thing and spend millions on production for ads, rather than just a small online marketing campaign to get a few sales. It may be the way for Tesla to totally remarket the brand as the EV for everyone, affordable for the masses, starting at perhaps only $25,000 after tax credits for a Gen 3 compact. Not everyone understands the benefits of EVs, let alone are aware of the features or technology available in a Tesla. Advertising could cajole these consumers into moving over to a Tesla and potentially help them even justifying spending more on a car than they would have if it had been ICE. And if effective, it could work out to be a lot more profitable than lowering prices. Thanks for listening. Please hit the thumbs up and subscribe. You can follow me on Twitter and talk to me on Patreon.